What are you doing out here? Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you.
Welcome back to Binge Point, where we dig deep into the stories behind your favorite films and the ones that got tangled in their own production webs. Today we're diving into the New Mutants, the long-delayed, horror-tinged entry in the X-Men universe that promised to shake up the superhero formula, but ended up becoming a fascinating case study in studio interference, corporate mergers, and creative frustration. This movie, directed by Josh Boone, was supposed to reinvent the mutant genre by blending teen horror, psychological trauma, and comic book powers, a mix that sounded bold on paper. But by the time it finally limped into theaters in 2020, after years of reshoots that never happened, release date chaos, and a merger that threw its future into question, the New Mutants had already become more famous for its production nightmares than for anything that actually appeared on screen.
You know the rules. No powers in here, and definitely no fighting.
When you watch The New Mutants, you can almost see the movie struggling to figure out what it wants to be. It starts with a strong idea: 5 teenage mutants trapped in what they believe is a hospital, slowly realizing they're actually part of a sinister experiment. That setup could have been perfect for a claustrophobic, character-driven horror story. And to its credit, the cast gives it real potential. Anya Taylor-Joy brings a dark, sardonic energy as Magic. Maisie Williams delivers a heartfelt and surprisingly vulnerable performance as Ronnie, and Blue Hunt anchors the story as Danny Moonstar, the newcomer whose power to make people's fears manifest drives most of the tension. There are moments where it feels like a fresh, smaller-scale Breakfast Club meets Nightmare on Elm Street vibe. You sense the ambition, the desire to make something more intimate and psychological rather than another city-destroying superhero spectacle.
To a safe place, and I'll take care of this bear. Sum in limbo omnipotence!
But that vision constantly clashes with a film that feels half-finished. The tone flickers between horror, teen drama, and standard mutant fare without ever settling on one. Scenes that should hit hard, like the characters opening up about their trauma, are cut short, leaving us wanting more. The horror elements are intriguing but rarely terrifying. The visual effects, while occasionally creative, often look inconsistent, like sequences were stitched together without a final polish. There's an emotional core here, especially in the developing bond between Ronnie and Danny, one of the few genuinely moving parts of the film. But even that gets buried under uneven pacing and underdeveloped side plots. You can feel a better movie buried underneath this one, clawing to get out. And to understand why that better version never fully surfaced, you have to look behind the scenes. The New Mutants wrapped filming all the way back in September 2017. At that time, Fox was still in control of its X-Men universe, and Josh Boone, coming off The Fault in Our Stars, wanted to create what he described as a superhero horror movie inspired by Stephen King and John Hughes. The studio initially supported the concept, but grew nervous about how to market something that didn't fit neatly into the standard Marvel formula. Early test screenings reportedly led executives to consider ramping up the horror tone, then to consider dialing it back. By the time the first trailer dropped in 2017, fans were hyped for a darker, R-rated mutant story, something genuinely new. But just months later, the film's April 2018 release date was suddenly delayed by almost a year. Then came the domino effect of delays. First to February 2019, then to August 2019, and then, after Disney acquired Fox, it got shuffled again to April 2020. For a time, it was unclear if the movie would even be released theatrically at all. Rumors spread that Disney might dump it on a streaming platform like Hulu, or that major reshoots were planned to completely overhaul it. Boone, however, later clarified that there were no real reshoots, just minor pickups, because by the time the studio gave the green light, the young cast had already aged out of their teenage appearances. In other words, it was too late. So the film sat on a shelf, caught in limbo as Disney finalized its $71 billion merger with Fox, unsure what to do with a movie that didn't fit either the MCU's tone or the X-Men series continuity. What finally hit theaters in August 2020, delayed again due to the pandemic, was, in Boone's own words, the original version he intended. But even if that's true, time had worked against him. Audiences had moved on. The superhero genre had evolved. And this small-scale, slightly dated story arrived after Logan and Deadpool had already redefined what adult superhero films could be. It didn't help that its release happened during the height of COVID lockdowns, when theaters were half closed and the box office was struggling to recover. With a worldwide gross of about $49 million on an estimated $80 million budget, The New Mutants quietly faded from the conversation, and yet there's something fascinating about its failure. Watching The New Mutants now feels like peering into a cinematic time capsule, the last gasp of the Fox X-Men era before Disney hit the reset button. It's a film that wanted to explore mutant trauma, fear, and identity through the lens of horror, but ended up crushed by corporate uncertainty. You can see flashes of what might have been. The eerie imagery, the nightmare sequences that nod to classic horror, the psychological tension that hints at something deeper. It's not that the film is terrible, it's just incomplete, caught between creative ambition and studio caution. In a way, The New Mutants is more interesting as a story about Hollywood than as a superhero movie. It shows how a film can get lost in the machinery, how corporate mergers, shifting market trends, and studio second-guessing can erode the spark of a unique idea. It's a reminder that timing can make or break a movie's legacy. If The New Mutants had released back in 2018 as planned before the Disney-Fox deal and the pandemic, maybe it could have carved out a cult following as a daring, genre-blending experiment. Instead, it arrived too late, weighed down by the baggage of 3 years' worth of uncertainty.
You guys hear that?
So, while The New Mutants will never be remembered as a triumph, it remains an oddly fitting finale for the Fox X-Men saga. Messy, ambitious, and full of unrealized promise. It's the cinematic equivalent of a mutant who never fully discovered their power. And that, in its own way, makes it worth revisiting. Not just as a movie, but as a lesson in how the film industry can transform a bold idea into a cautionary tale.
Thank you. Thanks, all of you. Are you kidding? You saved us.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.